hot, and I wasn't expecting aircon either. You see before you the budget monitoring outturn report. It's in the normal format, so I won't take you through every section, but the main sections are section 4 sets out your two, the outturn of your two cost centres you're directly responsible for, and those are summarised in Appendix A. So that's the finance department's cost centre. So that's got all the costs of the finance staff and all the costs of running the finance service at the top of the page in Appendix A. And the smaller box underneath are the public works loans boards that this council has taken out in various years since 2009. It gives you an update on the position of those at the end of the year. I would just say, looking at the top half of Appendix A, usually you would expect the finance cost centre produce a modest underspend, but as you can see, looking at just the bottom line, bottom right-hand corner under the variance, there's a £264,000 overspend, which is not normal at all. But if you look up the page, you can see that that is entirely due to account 53000 penalties and settlements. So that's where we posted the whole of the council's 4-year repayment of VAT settlement with HMRC, which has been the subject of lots of previous reports, so I won't bore you with it now. We did provide about £90,000 in this year's budget, 25-26's budget. So when the settlement came in at roughly £540,000, that left £435,000 that was an overspend against that budget. But that does represent the whole of the council's 4-year settlement. I can also report that where there was a question mark over whether or not HMRC would levy up to £150,000 extra penalty, they confirmed at the end of last week that they were content with the changes we've made to our control procedures, and therefore they will not be issuing a penalty notice to us. So that is the entirety of our liability for the last 4 years. Just to manage expectations, there will be a small amount of liability arising at the end of 25-26, which won't get quantified until after the year-end accounts are done, and that is expected to be adjusted through Q1's VAT return, so it shouldn't require a voluntary disclosure. It will be less than £50,000 is my estimate at the moment, and then for the first time in a lot of years, we'll be completely up to date with all of our procedures properly updated and fully compliant with HMRC VAT rules. So although that's an unfortunate outturn position, at last we've at least addressed that major problem at the council. Going back to the main body of the report, Section 4 just explains what I've just presented there. Section 5 then is looking at the council-wide position. You'll remember that full council and the finance committee have agreed that because full council agendas are very full and busy, they would like the finance committee to take a view on the whole council's budget monitoring reports at each meeting. And that's exactly what finance committee members wanted to do anyway. So that's why you see before you in section 6 all of the variances across all of the council's cost centres at the end of the year, those variances which are over £50,000, and it just provides a paragraph for each one of those. For each one of those in section 6, it also directs you to an appendix, Appendix D, and that gives you the whole of that cost centre's detailed results. As you saw in Appendix A for finance, you've got the same in Appendix D for all of those cost centres that have produced variances over £50,000. Happy to take any questions on those. And just to then explain what the other appendices are, Appendix B gives you the whole council's outturn, so you can look down there and see what the big variances are. You can see that at the bottom there, after the reconciliation, those boxes at the bottom of the page, the actual overall council outturn was £415,880 underspent. So that's good news compared to an overspend. Appendix C sets out the projects, what used to be called the capital programme, but as you can see by the pretty colours on Appendix C, you're using a combination of the capital receipts pot to fund some of those projects, and they're the ones highlighted in gold, you're using the Section 106 receipts in pink to pay for some of those projects, and you're using those coloured green to be funded from CIL. All the ones left white, of which there's only the Urban Tree Challenge and the Guildhall Ceiling in last year, those are being met from revenue. But that gives you the entire list of projects and how they outturned. Moving to Appendix E, you've got the 4 pots themselves, the different reserves. As you remember, the first set of bars is the general reserve. Then you've got the CIL receipts, capital receipts, and Section 106 receipts. And you can see the 3-year movement just looking at the 3 year ends, 31st of March 24, 25, 26. So you can see how they've changed. Not a lot of change in the 3 earmarked receipts pots, but obviously you can see a huge increase in general reserve from the roughly £428,000 at the end of March 24, how that's increased entirely due to the 2 year-end surpluses that we've produced. And then over the page in Appendix F, you can see that more graphically. If you ignore the last 2 data points on the right-hand side of the graph, this was called the graph of doom, you might remember, a year or 2 ago, where Asa and I projected a trajectory, just linking up all of those data points and looking at a line of best fit, and it showed an absolute downward trajectory. But as you can see, the £800,000 surplus at the end of 24, 25, and then the slightly smaller, more modest outturn that you've just seen reported in this report for 25, 26 has reversed that trend. And that's principally what gives rise to the general reserve looking so healthy in Appendix E. Just finishing off the presentation before taking questions, if you refer back to the end of the report, so Section 8 of the report just sets out a financial summary. It is good news, as hopefully you've seen from the graphs, but paragraph 8.4 is worth stating that this was not the position that we officers predicted in January this year when we assisted the councillors to set the council's budget. If it hadn't been for the VAT settlement, this year's outturn would clearly be, in the realms of £700,000, which is similar to last year's outturn. That's not what we predicted back in January. So on behalf of the officers, just wanted to make the point at the end of paragraph 8.4 that we're about to commence January 27's budget setting process for 27-28 financial year. And part of that is always looking for savings. So as and when we spot excess budgets that have given rise to this situation, we'll obviously be offering those up as savings in that budget setting round. Hopefully that's a good run through, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, that's a great report. Thank you for the update. Really, do appreciate it. I think the bar charts are looking great. I love a good bar chart. Very much love a good bar chart, and it's great to see the result. Obviously, it's good news. It's very good news in a sort of good news in a guarded way, I suppose, and that sort of delivering good value for the residents. But I think I'll take a big surplus rather than a big deficit at this point. And as long as we're feeding that into our budget considerations for next year, which obviously we will be, I think that's a really good and strong place to be. I think also the fact is there's a lot of the variances as discussed in the report are, there are plenty here which are just good, overachievement of targets. There's some really positive stories here that aren't. Well, there's some really positive stories here. Full stop. So, thank you for the report. Questions, Councillor Last.
So question one was around salaries. It's a very good point, well made, which is that 25-26 is the last year in which we set a budget in the normal way. We estimated what the salary costs and national insurance and pensions would cost, assuming full employment, no vacancies. So worst case scenario from a cost point of view, all of the posts are fully staffed all year round, set a budget that pays for that. I don't think any time since 2009 the council's ever needed 100% of its salary budget, because there's always a form of staff turnover. But nevertheless, that's the most cautious way of budgeting, and that's what we did right up to 25-26. You may remember from the job evaluation project that was carried out, you councillors insisted that it was affordable. We offered two definitions of affordability. One was, would it come within the total budget from that year, plus the £250,000 extra that you're awarded each year as part of January 25's budget setting. So one measure of affordability is you add all of that money up, and will all the new grades across the next 4 years come within that budget envelope? And we, Asa and I, in that report to you and Tracy, we clearly indicated that the final scheme as recommended to you would not come within that budget. So it didn't meet that very simple affordability definition. However, we offered you a second affordability definition, which is that if we used a managed vacancy factor and moved the incremental point where people get increments from April to October, then it could be affordable. All we need to do is calculate what the managed vacancy provision needed to be. And very simply, what that means is if we were fully staffed in a normal year, all of our budgets for salaries would be under costed by a percentage. And it's roughly, I need to recalculate based on Tracy's latest costings, but it's around about 7%. So every salary budget at the council across all the cost centres where there are staff is at sort of 93, 94% of what it needs to be with full staffing. SMT and ASA in particular, as a head of paid service, are confident that we can manage that situation such that we won't end 26-27 with an overspend on salaries. But the question, as presented, if you go to Appendix D1, little Roman numeral 1 after the Appendix D, that sets out all of the salary and national insurance, sets out the salary budgets across all the different cost centres that have got staff. It adds them all up down the bottom of the page. You've then also got national insurance underspend, which is actually an overspend of 2,841, and pensions underspend of 42,000. The total payroll budget underspend for the year was £214,352, which is 5.6%. That was in 25-26. We need to achieve roughly 7% in 26-27. It is an increase, but it's not a huge increase. And as the job evaluation report outlined to councillors that was approved at full council, in the unlikely event that with the SMT and ASA as chief exec, if it looks like we're not going to achieve the managed vacancy provision in this new 26-27 year, then the chief exec has to find alternative savings. So that was the ultimate safeguard, which will make sure that SMT and the CEO don't overspend salary. So I am confident.
How is it going so far? What's early in the year? How's it going so far?
I can't tell you now, but in a week's time I will be able to tell you, Councillor, because we don't do April budget monitoring, but we do May budget monitoring, and it takes us, because of our archaic manual processes, it takes the finance department a month after the month end to produce the budget monitoring report, which is a source of constant frustration by yourselves and by budget holders and heads of service. But it does mean that by the end of June, we'll have the May end budget monitoring report, which will be the first budget monitoring report in the new year and in the new regime of managed vacancies. And this gets reported in each one of those budget monitoring reports. So you will see that come back to a future meeting. In previous meetings, I think some councillors have said you might want to receive offline, not a council meeting, sorry, a committee meeting itself. You might want to receive budget monitoring reports for information. That's never been provided to you, but it's certainly within finance's ability to be able to send those out, if only to finance committee members, if not all 24 councillors. So if it's something you were interested in and you do want to wait for the next finance committee meeting, that's something I could circulate separately.
I'll come and have a chat with you next week.
Okay.
There's something to look forward to.
And then your quicker answer to the second question, which is the general reserve. There are lots of, for as many accountants as there's many views as to what the general reserve balance should be. As you probably remember, this council's policy is semi-complicated formula, but it works out about 1.65, 1.7 million pounds. That's the council's policy for the size of its general reserve. So compared to that, this is higher, but the more cautious accountants, and NAUC might represent that, would suggest that it could be higher than that. When we get to the internal auditor's report, so that's somebody completely independent of this council, he's reported that he's content that this is a sufficient general reserve for the size of council we are. If you just look at Appendix E, I inherited, or this council had 2 years ago, a very, very small and dangerously low general reserve. Compared to that, we have radically improved the situation.
That was an irresponsible council.
Hopefully that answers those questions.
Previous one, I said.
So the DT issue, we kind of agreed on 400,000, so we got off for 264,000. So I'm going to say that's going to be more.
Sven?
Thank you, Chair. Couple of things from me, if I may. So sticking with Appendix A, I notice it's the Finance Department, and only a Finance Department, I reckon, can go with a surprise £435,000 penalty to still coming out with just a deficit of 264. I reckon that's pretty good accounting, Steve. I'll give you that. Where did the NNDR and irrecoverable VAT come from?
NNDR.
Right. Yeah.
Non-domestic
Right.
rates.
Yeah.
So originally, all of the council's different properties that incur business rates, non-domestic rates, used to go through finance as part of our transformation that we've been
Yeah.
doing over the last 2 years. Because you wanted to know what the cost of the Guildhall, for example, is, the cost of the Friary.
Yeah.
You wanted to make sure that all
So this is just a hangover from that.
so
So
having decentralised all
Yeah.
of those costs, we were left with a small contingency for NNTR in case there was a business rate increase this year of 15,795 at the end of 2025.
Okay.
We didn't need it, and therefore I underspent by that exact amount.
okay,
Irrecoverable VAT was where, having recognised that we were misaccounting for VAT inadvertently, not deliberately, but carelessly, you created a budget of £30,000 in case the specific budgets you produced for irrecoverable VAT, for example, the crematorium, weren't sufficient. So again, that was an extra provision in case when we did all of the corrections in our VAT procedures, we found that we needed an extra £30,000 to cover irrecoverable VAT, and we did. So that's another underspend, which helps with the overall position. What irrecoverable VAT is, if we keep it very simple, so if we receive a supplier's invoice, let's say, for £100, standard rated, it could be any sort of activity, it could be stationery, it could be furniture, anything that's got standard rate of VAT on it. The supplier sends us an invoice for £100 plus 20%, £20 VAT, £120 in total. If we can reclaim it, we only put the £100 through all of the accounts of.
but if you can't, you've got to put the full whack through. Yeah,
But
no, I get it.
If it's an activity that we're not allowed to recover VAT on, and this is half of the problem of the £500,000, was that we've known forever, I think, that crematorium, cremations and burials are VAT exempt. We knew that, we didn't add VAT to our invoices to our customers, the funeral directors. However, the rules of HMRC are if you're not allowed to add VAT to your customers' invoices, you're not allowed to recover the £20 on every £100 of your purchase invoices that you're paying your suppliers in relation to cremations and burials. We forgot that, and therefore we recovered all those £20 when we weren't allowed to. So irrecoverable VAT is exactly what it says. We've now got budgets at the CREM and a spare one in finance, which is where we code all of those £20 to. If we don't code them anywhere, we'll automatically reclaim them and make the same mistake as we made before. So it does mean that for things like the crematorium, they're paying £120, where some other parts of the council are only paying £100 for exactly the same supply. But this is the right way of doing it now.
Second question then. So going down to Appendix B, and if I just pick one, facilities within environmental services. So full year budget before adjustments, 1.074 million. Full year opening budget after adjustments, 291,000. And within that, quite a lot of that is utilities, so gas, heat, light, and all the rest of it. So again, is this just the changeover from the way that we've handled figures and allocated budgets to the various cost centres rather than having them centrally?
It's for a variety of reasons, Councillor. If you look at Appendix D, Roman numeral 3, that gives you the whole of the facilities there. So it shows you how we arrived at these figures.
Yeah.
You can see that the
So I was coming to that. So within that, let's say full year budget before adjustments, repairs and maintenance, reactive 200,000, fully opening after adjustments 2,600. Now that's quite a difference.
Yes,
So
it is exactly the answer to your question, which is that whereas we used to have on repairs and maintenance reactive £200,300, 200k was sat in facilities, that was a centralised budget. If we use lots of it for the CREM or the Guildhall, it's used to just get charged for facilities. Facilities doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but the Guildhall and CREM and the Friary does. So we've now decentralised those budgets. So the reason why facilities has only got 2,600 is because the rest of that 200,300 pounds has been directed and decentralised.
okay,
to those others.
all right. So that and that would.
The other cost centres has gone up proportionately. While this one going down.
Okay. All right. And the same. So the gas, electric, water, and all that sort of stuff. Same thing. It's now been decentralised out to the various things. Excellent. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that I got the right thing there. So I'm guessing next year the difference between before budget adjustments and opening budgets after adjustments the numbers will be much closer together. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. On the general reserve thing, if we go down to the bottom, so I completely agree with Ted, actually. I think even 2 months reserves, I think, which is our policy, is about 1.7, 1.8 million, is ridiculously high. If we're not using the money to do something, we shouldn't be taxing our residents to do it. Yeah, I think it should be less than that. But looking at that 2.139 mil, now obviously that's not there for us just to take in one go, is it? That's going to be spread out over 50 years for the River Park development, St. Peter's Place and all the rest of it. That money is for, no?
No, sorry, councillor. Just looking at the 2.139 million,
Yeah.
that's in general reserve. It's the section 106 graph at the end that's got River Park section
Okay.
106 money in it.
Apologies, sorry, missing that. Okay, so we've got a huge amount of money sat in the general reserves, which we should be doing something with, not just sat there looking at it, congratulating ourselves, saying,
We're turning money.
am I allowed to talk, Ted, or are you just hang on a second? Yeah, if we've taken all this money from our residents in tax, we should either use it or give it back to them if we don't need it. We shouldn't just take it and stick it in the bank. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Sven. I think I will say I agree. The general reserve sits as high as it does because more or less we've ended up with 400-ish, 300-ish £1,000 more than we necessarily expected to. So I think that can certainly inform future budget, as we are starting the budget discussions soon.
It's certainly going to inform our future budget setting.
Well, absolutely, and it should, and it absolutely should. I'm in favour of that. So, you've spoken already, but just a quick one, right? Okay.
Well, I think Sven's making a very valid point. So let's say even though we are better off 400,000, is there any plan in the future that we can actually utilize that money? So in the future, we are more safe, but at least the resident doesn't have to pay extra on the following year. Is there something that we can utilize this money for? So,
Yeah, it's the budget setting, right? We can spend that money as part of budget setting, which we're about to start doing.
I'd rather invest on it than spend it.
Well, the point is we can make decisions
Yeah.
as we set the budget to spend down to our reserve limit. If I'm correct in saying that, Steve. Yeah.
I wasn't going to
I mean, excellent. But like a businessman myself, let's say if I've got £400,000 extra, right? The first thing I would do is find either commercial property or something, put the whole money in there, income, get a rent of 20 or 30,000 pounds. Don't you think that's a rather good idea? At least you got a property and you are having a good income. And years time, 5 years time, you can pay off that crematorium thing. Don't have to go and borrow money and things like that. Don't you think that's a good idea? I'm sure that's us to decide.
Ricky?
Chair, I think, if you look at that particular graph there, you can see how well we've done or how far we've improved since that low reserves of £500,000. Nearly all of it, well, I think every cost centre is now exceeding its targets. I think we'd be the envy of many, many a council who would look at that with envy in the financial position that we're in. So I think we've got a hold of spending. Managers are now controlling the budgets, which we were asking for many a year, and that's the result there, right in front of us. I think we're in a really good financial position.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Ricky.
So I'd also probably like to add to that by saying also helps that we're having the almost highest precept of any parish council in all England. Has helped that as well. Yeah. So we might be able to look at doing something about that for future. I
think if you look at the medium-term financial plan, you'll see that is the plan. And so, right, let's move on. We're noting this report. Thank you, Steve. I say thank you. You're doing the next one as well. So, item 10, annual review of financial authorization limits. Over to you again, Steve. Ted, and then Sven.
Yeah, I'm looking at these. Some of them are considerable jumps, and I wonder why it has to be so high. There doesn't seem to be any reason, justification why, for example, the under the first three headings, it's 250,000, whereas previously it had been 25,000. So it is not like not 100% sure, but more like 1,000%. I can't understand the reason for that. I think looking at again now absolute maximum, I mean absolute maximum, would be 150,000, and 100,000 would be better. I don't like that sort of, the sort of figures that are being put there as a single authorisation.
Sorry.
I was just going to say that as a council, we should be signing, knowing what is being signed off, anything over 100,000 pounds.
Just a quick.
You can look on the website.
Chair, thank you. Now, one of my first questions were going to be head of corporate and deputy CEO. They were sort of, deputy CEO was whoever the CEO decided to appoint in his absence. And we're now saying that head of corporate is the de facto deputy CEO now.
Yep.
Okay.
If you remember briefly, before he left the council, Mark Reed was the deputy
Yeah.
CEO. I think, I can't remember exactly how it's come up to council, so I'm pretty sure you've been briefed on this, but I think the idea is anyone who still could qualify, so it rules me out, but Janine and Mark Reed and Asa are all still qualified, so Mark and Janine should be able to step in and act as CEOs better than perhaps the rest of us non-still.
All right. So that's an answer to my first
But
question.
just to make sure I've understood, the role of head of corporate is not, it's not like if Janine leaves, it will not be, we won't be advertising for a head of corporate and deputy CEO, if you see what I mean. I don't know if that's the question you were asking.
No,
Because
I
I
thought it
asked the
was two.
same-
So I thought, well, I remember Mark Reed acting up as deputy CEO, but I thought that was just for the couple of weeks that Asa was away. I didn't realise it was a full-term thing.
Just to clarify, so all of us at different times have been acting CEO in Asa's absence, but then a couple of months before Mark Reed left the organisation, Asa wanted to designate a deputy CEO who happened to be silver qualified, and he made that formal change, and then it was Mark Reed as the head of environment and deputy CEO that was made the first deputy CEO. It appeared that no sooner had he taken that on than he resigned, and therefore Asa was keen to bestow that on another individual, so there's less uncertainty each time Asa goes on leave. So yes, it is Janine. It's only if Janine and Asa are off at the same time that perhaps one of the rest of us will be acting
Right.
CEO.
But effectively, it's The head of corporate is de facto CEO unless someone says otherwise for a period of time, whatever. Okay. Second question was going to be where all the blanks are in the grey bit. So we'll going down to sort of ordering single authorization and invoices limit single authorization. The bits in grey, you've just chief exec and RFO used to say unlimited. What about all the other grey bits where there isn't a red number in? Were they never in existence, or those individuals or positions did not have a limit, or how did that work?
So apologies for not making it clearer. So if you take the first one, chief exec officer, well, we've already mentioned him. So
Yeah.
go down to.
I mean, pick number 20, the operations manager. What did he have to do? What was his budget before?
So because only the title was changed, only the
Yeah.
title was highlighted yellow, his current limit of 5,000 for orders and 3,000 for invoices, we're not suggesting any changes to. So that's why there's nothing in grey shaded column, because we're not changing anything.
So what's in the grey shaded column with nothing in it is unchanged from what
It's
was
unchanged.
previous.
So I should have made that clear.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
So corporate managers had their budget or their signing off fee reduced then from 10,000 to 1,000. Is that right? Item 10.
The thousands was what I had last year. The 10,000 was authorising this year. So it's the other way, yeah. Do you get me? It's gone up. So that's the 1,000 I had last year. That's the last year. That's this year. Okay.
So just talk me through the process then. So let's say that we want to spend that 10,000 quid. What you can decide what you want to spend it on, and you can just go and say, I think I'm going to spend it on this. How does it? Where's the checks and balance that stops the list of offers just going out and spending whatever they like? How do you control that? What's the?
So you council set the budget
Yeah.
at the start of the year. The budget monitoring report will show you how that's split amongst all the budget lines.
Yeah.
So you can see what the corporate manager, for example, what budgets they've been allocated. Within those budgets, and they have to act within those budgets, the financial regulation says officers are not allowed to commit beyond or where there is no budget. So again,
Yep.
you've controlled how much each officer's got access to. We're only allowed to spend it on those activities that you've told us we want to spend it. So we're not allowed, we can't just spend £10,000 on anything we want. We have to demonstrate that it's to pursue the activities of that particular team in delivering the services you want them to. There's various other checks and balances. So purchase orders need to be approved by a second officer. So the first officer can raise one, the second officer, usually at a more senior level, has to approve it. There's other checks and balances over decentralised budgets where Tracy, for example, sees all staff training orders and she has to authorise those. You've got the head of service that sits above all of them.
Okay, right. So there is a process by which the individual can actually go and spend that money. Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Sorry, Andy would like to
Okay,
come in on
thank
this.
you.
And Andy would like to come in on this as well.
Like last
Sorry.
year, we brought in a lot more of our procurement policy, procurement rules. So a lot of it too is not just that one price we go out to get free under everything. So yeah, there's a lot more than just picking the first one. Okay. Yeah.
No, I was just trying to work out what's to stop you going, yeehaw, thank you very much, I'm going to spend this. Yeah. So, and Steve's given me the answer. That's fine. Thank you.
Any further questions? No, we do want to vote on this one. So I'm going to move the recommendation that we recommend approval to full council. Do I have a second? Cool. All those in favour? All those against? Good. All right, that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve. Right, review of financial regulations. Report updating the financial regulations. It's you again, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. I think
I'm surprised by that.
Chair, very helpfully.
Ted.
Yes, again, another question, please, Steve. Let's have a microphone going. Under 2.3, why is there the striking out of with the RFO? That's that one. Under 2.7, question, how can access be compromised? Under 4443, I'd like to see reason, I can see no reason why we shouldn't add, and chairperson of finance committee and report it to the next meeting of a finance committee. This means then that we actually know what's going on periodically anyway. And under 6.3, reconciliation of contracted cost and invoice. I don't understand what that's getting on about. And 13.1b, 91a, given 13 A, why CEO and not RFO?
Well, someone's read them, so that's really good. Thank you for that. So I'm taking each of those questions.
I think if we do them one by one in the sort of form of it's a lot of amendments, isn't it, I suppose? So, yeah, let's do each one by one, I think. Sven?
I've got a few as well. We might want to just make a list and then do them all in one go, maybe. Well, let's put the list together first and then see what we've got, shall we?
Yeah,
I
I
have a suggestion. That we do the amendments that I and Sven might have, and then stick it together and vote on the whole thing. Is it? Oh, sorry. I did
See what we got.
Yeah, all right. No, that, I'm fine. Yeah, whichever. But let's do that. That's fine. Carry on, please, then, Ted. Or Steve.
Yep. Right, so, oh yeah, I'm on now. Sorry. 4.3 was the next one, Councillor Last. I think you said 4.3. Is that right? Oh yeah, apologies. Ooh, corporate manager might know me might need to help out on this one. This is an IT issue. So I think this is the SMT recommendation. Jeremy has agreed the principle, but points out that access can be compromised in some technical scenarios, hence slightly amended wording. So I think Jeremy had wanted to add wherever possible to the NAUC form of words, because he felt that he couldn't give absolute 100% guarantee that this control would always work perfectly, was my understanding of it. Okay, all right, that one's done. And then 4.3, was that right, Councillor Last? So 4.3 is not all year round. 4.3 is specifically in order to set the budget in January. So it's saying in December each year, the RFO shall prepare a draft budget for the following financial year. In practice, I'm working with the administration and the opposition group or groups from about August onwards to try and produce budget proposals that those groups are happy with. And then we get to December, which is saying whether or not that's happened or not, even if no political group has wanted to produce a budget for the following year, in order to discharge our statutory responsibility, the RFO in December will make sure that there's something to put before full council. So it wouldn't be an all year round budget monitoring thing. It's a once a year thing. Okay, thank you. Yep. What was the question on this one? Sorry.
Reconciliation of the contracted cost and invoice. Surely, if we have a contract, there should be no need for any change of reconciliation of the invoice unless there is a credit because something wasn't done properly or whatever.
I think I'm looking at the wrong page. I'm looking at 6.3 on page 19 of 37.
And in that case, I have written something down incorrectly, and I that's
I think there was another one though, wasn't there, Councillor Last?
Yeah, under 13.1B stroke 91A, why CEO and not RFO?
This generated quite a lot of discussion at senior management team. I think so. So currently, as you can see from the SEC one, it's currently the RFO, and there have been several occasions since I started where a department and a head of service has wanted to give rent-free periods and didn't understand why it should go to the RFO. And if anything, it should go up to the CEO to make those decisions rather than sideways to the RFO. Just because it's to do with money, that head of service probably knows more about the circumstances of wanting to give a rent-free period or make a reduction or give a discount or give some compensation where the council hasn't provided a perfect service. So as RFO, I was happy that it goes up to the CEO who would make a common sense decision about those sorts of things with a wider knowledge than perhaps my very narrow focus on purely money, because the RFO might be tempted to never give rent-free periods or offer refunds when the CEO might. So it's probably better from a corporate perspective that the CEO can take a consistent view across all departments rather than your narrow RFO's view. And I was content with that compromise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted. Sven, let's come to you.
Chair, thank you. Most of these, Steve, are more just for clarity for me, really. Now 2.6, which is, I guess, page 6. When you say at least once in each quarter and at each financial year and a member other than the chair, I assume the chair is the chair of the finance committee, yeah? And a member would be a member of the finance committee.
Yes.
Super duper. Now 2.7, regular backup copies shall be made of the records on any council computer, yada, yada, yada. We've just talked about that a little bit. Jeremy has said there are some technical scenarios which may compromise. Do we know what those technical scenarios might be? You don't have to answer it now, but afterwards in an email, if you could, yeah, could I request through the chair that we ask Jeremy what those are? and he says, wherever possible. And I'd like a bit more clarity on what wherever possible actually means. Why wherever possible? Why can't we have a definitive yes or no? Well, I guess that will be part of the answer to my question before.
Absolutely, the two are connected. So now, without Jeremy's involvement, wouldn't have used wherever possible, just wants an absolute 100% assurance. It's only when Jeremy, as an IT practitioner, looked at this, said, well, no, there are some technical scenarios where he's got no control and he can't put control in there 100%. That's why he wants to add wherever possible. But as you say, you've asked for those scenarios, and perhaps that would clarify.
If you could do that, would be good. And just out of interest, also for later, how often do we back up our data? Do we know?
We're actually moving to the cloud now, so pretty much it's daily. Like everything we're doing and everything we're moving to is the cloud. So anytime we do any work, it's backed up.
Okay, SCC line 4.3, which is page 11. So unspent provisions in the recurring capital budgets or completed non-recurring capital budgets shall not be carried forward. Unspent provisions in the revenue budgets for specific activities for uncompleted non-recurring capital budgets may be carried forward. With the revenue, regards to the revenue budgets, I'm slightly wary that that might mean that we can have the sort of forever rolling over budgets. What constitutes a specific project that would mean we would stop rolling over the revenue budget? What's to stop us just picking any budget, saying it's all specific and rolling over every budget?
So we've, I don't know if you remember, the committee remembers, but I brought last autumn the first, I think, report of violence. So this, the movement of budgets from one place to another is called environment. This is similar, but it's between years. So it's a budget carry forward is what it's called. So the chief exec has, for the last 2 financial years, asked at the end of the year on the revenue side, which are all those 51 cost centres, all of the budget of the council split between those 51 cost centres. We had a big underspend at the end of the year, so the chief exec invited heads of service and budget holders, are there any amounts of unspent budget in your cost centre which was for a specific purpose, not just, I just haven't spent all my budget, can I carry it forward please, but I was planning on buying this IT equipment. This is a real example from Jeremy a couple of months ago. And then the golf got closed and the equipment couldn't get delivered in time. So he couldn't go out of 25-26 budget. So Jeremy said, you know, I want still need to buy that equipment. Can I buy it in next financial year? Therefore, can I carry forward an amount of budget from old year to new year? So they're the sorts of things. We're not allowed to carry forward just general underspend, otherwise we'll just be accumulating year after year. So each year, ASA gets a list of all of the requested budgets from budget holders with a reason for each one. I was planning on doing this, can I carry it forward? I was planning on doing that, can I carry it forward? He weighs up how much the underspend for the council is and decides, because he's got this delegated authority, which of those, if any, will he agree to carry forward. He never agrees 100%. People are always disappointed, but he wants to return as much as possible to general reserve. But where a budget holder has demonstrated to his satisfaction that there was a specific thing that does still to be needed to be done by the council, it wasn't asked for in the new year. The old year budget is the only place where there's budget for it. He's agreed those. And we could bring forward a list of those if you want to actually see, for transparency purposes, what the chief executive agreed to carry forward.
Yes, I'd like to see that if that was possible. Can that be arranged?
That's quite an interesting thing to see.
Yeah, I'd just like to know what those specific projects were. SC 3.6 on page 12. So this goes to the reserves again. So our policy is 2 months minimum, which is about 1.8. And yet we're saying we should never drop below 750K. Now, is that too, I guess my question is that too low given where we ended up before, where we got down to under 400 and no one even knew? Is 750K a sensible number, or should we keep it at the level of the reserves and be advised if there's any projects or something coming up where we drop below that number? Why did we pick 750k?
We picked, so that's not a new number. That was picked
It's
When-
one month's reserves.
when we were looking at the sort of middle bar last year. So 750k was when we were at, that would have been half of what our general reserve was then. You're absolutely right. Now we've got even more general reserve. 750 seems very low, but that was the origin of that 750. It was pretty much plucked out of the air. It would be good to have a minimum and maximum range, but of course, like all plans or rules, that then constrains and fetters the council. So there could be a scenario where, for good reason, you'd be content for it to drop to 750, whereas if you've just raised it to 1.5 million, you wouldn't be allowed to. You'd be breaking your own rules. So I'm comfortable that you've got a very large range. As you say, though, if you want to better control it, you can set a larger minimum value.
Through you, Chair, and I think committee, I think we really don't want to face what we faced previously and really go complicit and let go of the amount. So I think personally, should be a higher amount than 750.
Ask a question. I was led to believe there is now guidance on what percentage it should be. So what is that? I thought that was a bit higher than the 750. Or is it?
It's a year's reserves.
Yeah, see, that's what I thought. So
So you used to have, the council had, it set the 2 months turnover roughly. So that was 1.5 million. And without knowing it, the council, were at 400,000. So, you know, this council's got a history of breaking its own rules. We're now a lot more prudent and you've got transparency. The reason why you couldn't see that is because under AGAR, under the accounting regime that the parish councils have to follow, you're not really supposed to have 4 separate pots or earmarked reserves. You're supposed to just call it all reserves. So this council has always had millions of pounds of reserves, but didn't realise that a large proportion of those reserves were Section 106, which you could only use for Section 106 things. SIL you can only use for SIL. Capital you can only use for capital. The amount of freely available, use it any way you want, was only 400,000. And the wording was just general reserve. So strictly speaking, you met the general reserve of 1.5 million, but in terms of what amount of that can you spend on anything you saw fit, it was only 400,000. So we've now introduced lots more clarity. We call these all different reserves, and we specifically now always refer to the general reserve. Now with that clarity, you could raise the limit without causing yourselves problems, I think.
Well, we've made a recommendation on full council, so we agree this one right now to raise it to, and that falls part of the recommendation on full council, and we'll vote on it.
We can do that now.
I've moved forward with that. I have no specific issue with it being 750, but if the move in the room says let's do it a bit higher, we have a number in mind.
Of course, just.
Mel? Yeah.
Let's add to the list of
Steve,
Absolutely fine, yep.
how much?
Well, no, 1 million's fine, yeah.
How much?
1 million.
What about 1.5? No.
I was going to propose 1250.
Yeah, all right, I'll accept the compromise.
Well, I started it, so I'll go with 1 million. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I second it.
Right. All those in favour of me? Sorry, Chair, that's your job, not mine. I'll shut up.
Right, okay, we've got, we
Minimum of 1250.
said we'd do this all at once, but now we've got 2 competing.
Right,
This is
down-
complicated.
right
Right,
down the
okay,
list
fine.
of things
Look,
that-
Sven has proposed 1 million.
One.
Councillor Brown has seconded it. All those in favour of that?
Can I make an amendment?
No, you can't. This is an amendment. We vote first.
Let them vote first.
So all those in favour of it being 1 million? All those against? 4. Well, I got the casting vote, so let's make it 1 million. It's not fair. Right, look, bring the case. Look, I mean, we make this is only a recommendation. When it comes to full council, suggest it's 12.50 and we'll take it from there.
Okay, next, SCC 1.1, all contracts for goods, works and services, including concession contracts, should comply with the council's detailed contract procedure rules. Are those available on our website?
I believe so. Janine's in charge of contract procedure rules. Are
Cool.
they on the website, Andy?
Is that for the public, for us? Sorry.
I would, as a member of the council, I would like to see the rules under which our
Yeah.
contracts are
Yeah.
being.
Yes, so we can get it, yeah, it will be available for councillors, yes. Yeah, on the SharePoint one, yeah. So I've got a SharePoint drive, which we got councillors on, which that should have procurement ones.
Okay, so through SharePoint, yeah, that's what.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
said.
yeah.
So
I'll
it's
send-
available through SharePoint, okay?
Yeah.
Now 5.7. So for contracts estimated to be over the threshold set out in the council, so, okay, contract procedure rules, within that will also be those thresholds? So that's SharePoint as well. SCC 10.2, which is, oh crikey, going a bit. Page 18. So I'm not quite sure I agree with striking out all members and officers are responsible for obtaining value for money at all times, because I think that should be at the forefront of everything we do and every penny we spend. And the rest of it, I believe, just allows us to add bells and whistles and a bit of gold plate, which pumps up the costs, but yet still gives latitude for officers to say, well, I had to do that because it was fair and reasonable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I would like the first line that was struck out to be put back in, because I think that should focus everybody's minds on what we're here to do. Value for money, I feel, is extremely important. So if we add, this is on page 18. 10.
Yeah, it's the recommendation notes sort of seem to run contrary to that strike through anyway, don't they? Like the recommendation notes suggest to emphasise the importance of securing value for money, and that's the bit that's been struck out. Just an observation. Okay.
Yeah, so are we saying that stays in or it comes out?
I mean, I'd agree. I think that should stay in. It just the notes seem to contradict the fact that it's been taken out.
Okay, so that will be on the list of things to vote about in a minute then, I guess. Now 6.9, 6.10.
Chair, can I just remind everybody of email that came out from Andrew, and some of these actually voted on, some of these agree that we should discuss them. But on the ones that we've just got queries on, we were asked to, make those queries in advance of this meeting. This is a huge document. I think some of the questions could have been put to Steve before the meeting.
My bad, I've been really, really busy and haven't had time to really go through it until the weekend. Just two.
Chairman, just very quickly, I mean, when you are giving out this numbers, can you also give the page number as well? So it just gets straight to the point.
Okay, that one's been answered, and the last one is SCC 13.4. Where the hell that's gone?
What page is that?
Don't know, I'm trying to find it. Must be down the bottom. Yeah, it's last on my list. An officer in charge of each function shall be responsible for ensuring periodic stock checks and stores at least annually. Do we do that already?
Yes, we require it for year-end accounts at 31st of March.
Okay, and where can I find the list of the inventory that we've stock checked? Or is that SharePoint also?
I'm probably the only person who's collated it from all the different departments as part of the year-end account, so I can provide that.
If you wouldn't mind, that would be good. I'd just like to see what we've got lying around. That's all. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, committee, for your patience.
Thank you. Right, okay, so we've had some proposals or some proposals for an amendment. Does anyone have any questions on any of these amended?
Just want to check, read out what they are just for clarity, Chair, if I could ask.
Yes,
I forgot what
indeed,
Ted's
yeah.
were already.
Do you want me to go through them, or is
Yes,
Beth, is
please,
Beth
yeah.
try to capture them?
So 2.3, you wanted to amend it to CEO with the RFO. And then, are we doing them one at a time, are we? There's not too many, so you could do one at a time. It's not-
Do one at a time.
Okay, one at a time.
So on 2.3, I'm sorry, I didn't write the page down after requesting it. Page 5, thank you. You asked to amend it to say CEO with the RFO rather than just CEO.
All those in favour? Fantastic. Yep. Next, please.
And then 10.2, SCC 10.2, sorry, which is page 18. You wanted to reinstate the line that had been struck out.
Yep.
Yes.
All those in favour? Yeah, great, thank you.
And then the other one, which was the 4.11, amend minimum to 1 million, you already voted on. So I
Very
think
true.
that was all the amendments.
Fantastic. Right, thank you very much. Amendments passed. Right, and then are there any further questions or comments on the report? We do have to review and recommend as amended. Yeah, I'm very happy to propose 3.1 to review this, recommend approval with revisions as amended up to full council. Do I have a seconder? Sven. All right, all those in favour? Fantastic, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Great. Next, final thing then, item 12, internal audit report. Thank you, Steve. Excuse me.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the third and final internal audit report. Each of the, under the financial regs that we just approved, it still will say that every internal audit report has to come to Finance Committee. So we're one of the few areas of the council that you'll always have an independent and objective view. It covers more than just the finance practices, procedures, and processes. There's a little bit of governance as well. So you'll see reference in here to some of the governance work that Janine and Andy's department are responsible for. But primarily it's about the finances and the financial governance of the council. As I say, this is the third one, concentrated mostly on year-end accounts and processes thereby to produce the accounts. So that's the flavour of this particular report compared to the one that came in January. This is very much accounts driven. It's very complimentary, but I won't sing those praises. It's a satisfactory report, as you can see from the executive summary. He's content. The testing did not identify any procedural errors, requirement important to the external auditor at this time, nor did we observe any material weaknesses in internal controls that would pose a risk to public funds. Pleased to report that overall the systems and procedures currently in place are appropriate and effective. So, and there's more of that. So that gives you high level assurance. You've then got the detail, 19-page document, rather than go through every page, but you can see on page 11 and 12, this is much more pertinent for next week's full council meeting, where all of the AGAR, the year-end annual governance report, comes for full council to not just approve the financial accounts, but to also assess whether or not the council's content with the whole of the internal control environment. Because if you're not, then how can you trust any of the numbers and the accounts coming out of it? So pages 11 and 12 go through next week's AGAR. That's what the annual governance statement is part of. And it goes through each of the 10 assurances. So on page 11 there, on the left-hand side, these are all the assurances that the internal and external auditors will want to check to make sure that the council has complied with all of those. Number 10 is brand new. So since 2009, the first 9 have always been there, but this year is the first year that GDPR and data protection is now a new assurance, because it's obviously so important with cyber security and for general security at the council. So you can see that every one of those assertions on the right-hand side of that table, the internal auditor, based on all the checks they've done, is content that we could score every one of those as a yes. So that hopefully gives you assurance at the Finance Committee as well as next week's full council meeting. And then bottom of page 12 and 13, those are the financial accounts as per AGAR, and he's agreed all of the 2025-26 figures. And there's one small restatement on the top of page 13 where I discovered that we hadn't accrued for a camera in the previous financial year. So we'd missed that. It's only about £700. But as a result of that, that's why there's a restated figure at the top of page 13. I only mention that because hopefully that demonstrates that we're always on the lookout for errors and corrections that we need to make. So we're not complacent. And then jump into page 19 are the 3 recommendations the auditors made on this visit. And this will get added to the table of all the recommendations that the auditors made certainly since I've started. And there are some other existing outstanding ones. He hasn't mentioned fixed asset register. And although I could get away with not mentioning it, it would be remiss of me to not remind the committee that that is probably our most serious undelivered audit recommendation. The auditor is still not content that our fixed asset register is robust as it should be. He's happy with the figures and the values in there, but not the security over the fixed asset register. He just feels that for a council with £20 million worth of public assets under AGAR, 41 million under SORP, we should have a more robust fixed asset register. That's not mentioned in here, but I'm just being honest that that's still on my radar and we need to put that right as soon as we can. For this report, the 3 recommendations are the reserves, where, as I mentioned before, within the 2.1 million, if, for example, £500,000 of it was funding that the council had agreed for the new cremators or any other medium-term reason for keeping money for that particular purpose, then we should create a new earmark reserve for it so that we don't lose it like we did previously. So I would agree with that. That's a good idea. Then there's the £1 rounding error that he wants to point out to you, and I'll make sure that we fix that. And he suggests that the variance analysis, these are some of the supporting schedules I have to do as part of AGAR. You don't usually see them, you're very welcome to, but they go to the external auditor for part of their analytical review when they compare last year with this year. They use these variants and that, and so they're different to the ones that budget holders produce. They're ones that I have to produce. But again, the internal auditor trying to be helpful is saying, I've seen Steve's early version and it's not detailed enough. So rather than it being bounced back from the external auditor, the internal auditor saying I should provide more information, which I will do. So I agree that one as well. And then the third one is outside of my area, but this is more to do with that assertion 10 to do with digital compliance. And he's just made a point of saying that we need to make sure that we're reflecting the latest regulation on that and not an earlier version, which I'm not sure if Andy has had a chance to check with Jeremy, but I think Jeremy's content that we can tick that off as well in due course. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Article.
Thank you, Steve. Maybe I didn't get that for my clarification. So here on the reserve, it says 2,139,036. But on this page 10, for instance, where in our bank balance, we have several banks, we've got 3,764,000. So what's the difference? I mean, maybe I didn't quite catch.
So as you know on a balance sheet, there's not a direct link. There's not a direct link between your reserves, which could have some intangible amounts in there, and your bank statement. We don't try and keep pound for pound all of them in there. I can give you a reconciliation to demonstrate how you get from the bank balance assets to the reserves, which is a different part of the balance sheet. that they're roughly to the nearest million. You know, we've got money in CCLA investments, which isn't classed as a bank account. We've got money with HSBC. We had money out at the year end on the money market. There's lots of petty cash imprests that are also at the council. So I can give you a reconciliation of the two, but you would never expect the general reserve of 2.1 million to equal any one or more bank balances.
Yeah.
Sven?
Chair. This good news story, isn't it? Without a doubt, this is a good news story, and largely down to Steve, you, and Dave, I think. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. Well done. Just a couple of me being. So in the summary, point E, page 5. The council sales ledger to nominal ledger reconciliation is out of reconciliation by 25p. That's the right figure. It's not 25. Okay. So it's been static for the last 2 months. So when it says RFO to correct this imbalance, does that mean you're looking for where that 25p is, or you're looking for why it's been static for 2 months and no one's? Does that mean no one's checked the ledgers over a 2 month
Yeah,
period?
there's still an error of 25 pence, so that's bad, and we need to find it and fix it. But it's good that it hasn't changed. If it was changing every month, it would show that there's some systemic problem that we haven't found what the answer is. It's good news because it may have been 25 pence for the last 17 years. But he's right in saying there should be no difference at all. He would also suggest that, well, it might be a debit of 1 million and a credit of 1 million and 25 pence. So actually there's £2 million worth of errors in there. The fact that it hasn't changed sort of shows that it's a historic anomaly, but I do still need to fix it because he won't have 100% confidence if I can't demonstrate where that 25p is. If I can't find that, how do I know that all the other figures are correct? So I will find it.
No, it wasn't necessarily finding the 25p. It was the statement that it was static, so that no one's actually looking for it, or no one's actually tried to reconcile
No,
the two
we've
things.
had more important things to
Yeah,
do.
no,
but
I get that.
I'm not trying to.
No, I get that. That's all right. Further down the page, items B, E, and F, it says VAT was properly accounted for. Fantastic. That's good news, but it also means your time on VAT is now up, and anything else that comes up is down to you. But good news. And the last thing, point K, internal audit requirement. If the authority certified itself as exempt from a limited assurance review in the previous year, it met the exemption criteria and correctly declared itself exempt. And then the conclusion, the council did not certify itself exempt from a limited assurance review the previous year. And the testing for this internal control objective is not applicable. So did we not exempt ourselves by accident, or did we not exempt ourselves on purpose? And if we did exempt ourselves, I'm trying to work out if we've actually made a mistake here. Because it seems to be.
It's unclear. Apologies, that's clumsy wording by the internal auditor, if I can suggest that. If you look at page 18, it probably sets it out a bit easier. So really, this is not applicable to us, and that's all he's saying is that we didn't make a mistake. We didn't meet the criteria to be exempt. We've had a full audit done. We didn't try and duck out of it. So some councils, if they meet certain criteria, they can say we don't want to be audited. To spare themselves the aggravation and the cost of an audit. This council knows it's so big and important that we should always have a full audit, and therefore we haven't chosen to try and use any of those exemptions. So that should be a good thing, but it's set out more clearly on page 18. Where you've got a whole
Just trying to
list
work out whether it said not covered is because we hadn't covered it because we didn't need to, or not covered because we hadn't.
Yeah, so we wouldn't meet any of the criteria, but yeah, he could have put it a bit more positively.
It just looks like it's a negative
Does look like
rather
we've
than
missed
positive.
something out.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Any more? No. Okay. In which case, I will be very happy to just say that this is a very good piece of work, and I thank you for bringing it to us. And I always get a little twitchy to see audit reports where there isn't something. So I'm glad to see there are things, because no one's perfect. but thank you very much for the report. I'm
Well,
happy to propose 2.1 to consider the report, to refer it to full council. To refer it to full council.
Yeah,
That's the whole
seconded,
thing, isn't it? Seconded. All those in favour? Fantastic. There are no further items on the agenda. The time is 8:01. Close. Thank you.